Welcome to Three Films and a Podcast, the show where destiny brought together three friends to enhance each other's cinematic journey by watching three new movies in a series of themed rounds. There is no claim of ownership on any film footage used in this episode, as all film footage is owned in its entirety by the copyright holders. And just like every car in Too Fast, Too Furious, this podcast contains spoilers. Enjoy!
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Three Films and a Podcast. My name is Tyler Beck, and joining me today, we have the heart and soul of this podcast, Mr. Ben Lawhorn.
Me? Thank you. Yeah, yes, I'm here.
Thank you.
That was going to be Matt for sure.
Well, see, Matt is the guy that he's the one that makes us look so good. He's sort of the face of Three Films and a Podcast. He's to my left here. His name is Matt Weiler.
Hola, muy buenas tardes.
See, showing off.
He's the face and the voice of this podcast.
Yeah.
Stuttering gringo Spanish.
It's very on brand for us. Well, if you're new here, or whether you're new here, or if you're an established movie club member, thank you for your support. We're so happy to have you all here. And if you're not already following us at Three Films Pod on all the social media feeds, take a second and give us a follow. We do lots of fun stuff, lots of voting for. Like right now we're doing the action draft voting, and that's really fun. And it's just a cool way to stay connected to you, our community, and for you to stay connected to each other. So yeah, give us a follow at Three Films Pod, all the socials, and then check out our website, threefilmspod.com, for Patreon support options.
We've pumped the brakes on season 2, but season 3 has got to be the return of the watch party.
Yeah.
And I think that's
where we'll be back in a big way.
Right? We got to have it.
It's going to be huge.
Yeah.
It's going to be huge. And the only way you'll know about it is through social media, and on social media, Twitter votes and IG voting, and Facebook, I suppose, but I don't ever get on there. Yeah. That's how there's interaction there. You can help pick the movies that we watch. So give us a follow. It's a lot of fun. So we had a guest for this week.
We did.
I don't have a funny way to say that he's not going to be here, so it's just going to be the three of us. Longtime listeners know we tend to have guests on all of our shows. And speaking of season 3, we're going to be looking for guests coming up for upcoming episodes. So
could be you.
It could be you. So again, follow us on all the socials. And
can we get that in 3D?
The 3D glasses.
Yeah, put the intern to work. Well, so let's just get into the episode.
Do it.
Enough fanfare, right? This episode marks the final episode of the final round of our second installment of Trilogy Rounds. If you've been following along over the past few weeks, again, thank you for your support. But you should know, you would know, since you've been following us. You should, and you would know that we've recently covered A Fistful of Dollars and For a Few Dollars More, which means that this episode is all about the 1966 Western classic directed by Sergio Leone, starring Clint Eastwood, Eli Wallach, Lee Van Cleef, and of course, featuring the iconic score by the legendary Ennio Morricone. Legend. Such a legend, I can't even pronounce his name correctly. But that's just the white boy in me.
Intimidating.
Part of the show.
That's right. This week's episode is all about the good, the bad, and the ugly. I want to jump right into our personal experiences and first impressions of the movie. I keep forgetting about who's seen what. I feel like Matt might have seen some of this stuff, some of these Dollars movies before, but this is my first time ever seeing it.
Same.
And this is one of those movies that when we talked about this when we talked about Hitchcock movies and some of those movies around that time in season 2. But it just sort of seemed like a movie that was like baked into Americana, right? Like it's just one of those ones. You've heard the theme song, you've heard the quotes, you've seen Clint Eastwood's squinty glare. You've seen all that stuff. And there's so many references that come back to this trilogy and this movie specifically. And it was just really, really cool to see all of that not come to fruition, but to become acquainted.
Yeah, to get the context for it kind of thing. Yeah,
totally.
That's how I felt with, like, I don't know if it's like PC or not, but the whole Mexican standoff at the end. Yeah. Because obviously just iconic. And so to finally get the context behind it, because I mean, this is a 3-hour movie, and spoiler alert, but it doesn't happen until like 2 hours and 50 minutes in. You know, I kept thinking like, cool, we're getting like,
Any minute now.
Yeah, like, you know, somewhere in Act 2 where this is going to happen. It's like, no, man, you have to wait until this is like almost over. But like it paid off. Like I got it. It was cool to see that. Obviously the Ennio Morricone, like I was talking to my girlfriend about this. It's just like, we've heard that for so long in our lives. Like just that sound, you know, everybody knows it. So to now like finally hear the context of it and like when it was like originated, it's like, man, this is so cool. And what would it have been like to hear this for the first time back?
Yeah,
like
seriously.
Was it like instantly iconic or did it like grow? I don't know.
Yeah.
It feels like a thing that was just like instantly like, this is taking off. Like that is, you just play that like 3-second clip and you can just picture like, okay, it's a spaghetti Western. Like whatever it is, you know, just you play that, not even necessarily this movie. It's just like, you can see the dust, you can see like the standoff, whatever. It just becomes so iconic. Like whatever's bigger than iconic is what it is. Cause it's just like, there's just nothing else could be better. There's a reason that like Tarantino brought Ennio back for the Hateful Eight, I think, to do that soundtrack, you know, because it's like, this is like the guy that can do it. Like he kind of brought him out of retirement to do that soundtrack.
I did not know that.
Fun fact.
Fun fact.
But
there's the
like,
trivia.
Yeah. As much as this like made Clint Eastwood, my dumb brain is like, I think it maybe kind of made Ennio Morricone as well at this point. Like, I don't know enough about him or his history before. So if there's like an Ennio scholar right now who's like yelling, it's like, no, dude, he did so much stuff before this. Like, I don't know that.
Sure,
but
he did.
I think at least for Americans, this was just like, oh, who did this? This is awesome. So I loved it. I'm glad he picked it. It's a great this is the last movie of season 2 for us.
Yeah.
Because next week's
That's
our
crazy.
anniversary episode. And I think this is like a fantastic one to go out on. Like our first movie was Scream and our last one's Good, Bad, and the Ugly. And I think those are like great bookends.
And it was,
That's cool.
It's like a really cool summer trilogy, you know, like we're in all these movies, we're in the deserts of Texas and New Mexico and you know, Mexico, I think.
Yeah.
And so it's hot and it's dusty and it fits the unfortunate heat wave that we've been in recently. Like when you were talking about Ennio Morricone and the classic the whistling, it reminds me a lot of like the same sort of signature that Hans Zimmer has. And like Hans Zimmer is like way more of like I want to say it's like reductive, but it's like, it's just that one tone, that blom tone. Like it's sort of has that same ubiquity of there. Like when if you're to make like an action movie parody, you would put the blom into
you
it.
do the Inception trailer soundtrack.
Yeah. Or people sort of like work their own versions of that into their legitimate, you know, action and sci-fi movies. And this, like the whistling whale, I don't know what you want to call it. I'm not going to do it. Ben, you can just put the clip in.
Roll it.
But you know, you hear that, and like you said, it's instantly like, oh yeah, this is spaghetti Western. And if you can mimic that in any sort of way or sort of work some sort of call to that into it, like it instantly puts you into that world. And it's like, it's so simple and just so ubiquitous and iconic at this point. It was like every time it happened, I was like, oh fuck, they're doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they did the thing.
Ashley made the point. It's like, oh, this is like just watching, you know, kind of the Pace Picani commercials. Like this is like, that's that noise. That's what we grew up on, just hearing that. Now it's just like, oh, this is what it was created for. And it totally makes sense.
And like when you were playing guns when you were a kid, I would assume, I know I did, like you would whistle that, you know, you would make the sound in your head. But Matt, you picked this trilogy and I keep forgetting like what your experience was with it before we did this exercise. So I'm curious about like your experience with this film and all of them together.
Well, my dad, Steve. Hey, Steve.
What's up,
Dad.
Steve?
Hi, Steve.
Hey, Dad. He indoctrinated old films. And what's weird to me is that like this to him wasn't even like that old. This is like Ben showing his posterity Ferris Bueller.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's weird how close it was to him. And it's just weird thinking about that now. Like it's old to me. It was old to me. But like in our generation, like the spaghetti Western was the Western. Like my dad's generation,
Right.
like they grew up with John Wayne. So like this was like a foreign thing. This was like a new thing. But like for us, like this has always been kind of like Americana Western.
It's sort of
you
all
know?
this, all the same.
Yeah.
Sort of. I know it's not, but like what you're saying, I agree with. Like growing up, it took me the longest time to understand what they meant by spaghetti Western.
Right.
I was like, I thought it honestly, I thought it had to do with, okay, this is a weird tangent, but Woody in Toy Story, how he's like lanky and gangly. Yeah. I thought that was a reference to spaghetti Westerns because they moved gangly like spaghetti. Like that's genuinely what I thought when I was younger, but
I think you should make that what it is.
Well, I think that's official.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people, I mean, we know a lot about film, so we know.
We're learning.
No, but I think there are a lot of people who don't really know what that's even referencing.
Totally.
Like, they know the term spaghetti Western. I think they can associate it with the score. But I don't know. They realize that these movies, these Clint Eastwood movies were filmed in Europe. They're filmed mostly in Spain, but by Italians. And so that's where the spaghetti Western comes into it. For those who don't know, for us, like we grew up with Clint Eastwood movies, or at least we grew up
the idea of
around them in pop culture. And so like for us, it was just like always just part of like what Western culture was.
Totally.
Like for all we knew, that music existed in the Wild West.
Yeah.
Right. That's what the wind sounds like.
Exactly. It's exactly what it sounds like.
But yeah, I had somewhat familiarity with these movies. I haven't seen them in, 20 years.
Yeah.
And so we were due for it, especially after covering Akira Kurosawa. Wanted to revisit these because they're iconic. For me, like revisiting this movie, I was disappointed when this movie started because his poncho is so iconic from the first two movies.
Yeah.
And in Italy, these were spread out a little further apart. I think they came out the same year in the United States. So they didn't have as much of a gap as the Europeans did.
Oh, interesting.
From what I could tell.
Nope, that's canon. That's
the truth.
Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. But so anyways, like I was waiting for the poncho. Like he starts off in like this duster. I'm like, what? They dropped the poncho, but then in the third act, he finds a poncho.
Yeah. It's gotta happen.
Huge poncho payoff.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry I spoiled that. Like, if you haven't seen this movie, it's spoiled, but you're gonna get some poncho.
Plenty of poncho.
And it's good. I loved how Clint turns into Emperor Palpatine out in the desert with his just dry, ugly face, scarred face.
That was so gnarly watching that stuff. Like I know back then they weren't like the theaters were showing it as we like saw like DVDs at best, like it wasn't insanely clear. So to watch it now like in 4K, it's like, oh my God, that's so gnarly to look at that. Like, it looked fake, but it looked super painful at the same time. It's like that you can tell these are just layers of makeup, but also it looks like it hurts so bad.
And same with like Tuco's lips in some of those scenes. It's like,
that was,
I don't want to look at this guy.
Yeah, that was pretty brutal. And I had the same thought, like, this probably didn't look as clear, and it actually probably looks worse now.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, and not worse in a way that like it looks bad, but it looks like it's not fun to. If that were actually your affliction, like it would be a real bummer.
And I was surprised how long in the movie he is like suffering, I guess. You know what I mean? Because he is our protagonist, and he's kind of seemed perfect, I guess, these first two movies. Like I know, with the Yojimbo for A Fistful of Dollars, like he, gets caught and all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, he seems like untouchable.
Yeah.
And in this one, it's just like, oh, like, how is he going to get out of this? Because he doesn't have a gun, and he's just like, he's walking in the desert. That reminded me of it reminded me honestly of Spaceballs, but it's like those Star Wars, and they're like all walking through there, like such like this comb to be following behind him, like those far shots in the desert.
Have you found anything? Man.
There was some summary or tagline or whatever about this movie that talked about Clint Eastwood's character as being invincible. And so like, you're absolutely right. Like he seemed certainly invincible in the first two. He seemed a little more vincible.
Yeah, he was Vince
in this one
for sure.
And there were times where like coincidence, helped him out a ton.
Yeah.
But wasn't complaining. I wanted to see him.
Yeah,
want to see him finish the job.
Classic Mary Sue, Clint Eastwood. Jeez, no
Gary Sue.
Matt, do you remember what your impression was 20 years ago when you were younger, or was it just the movie your dad made you watch?
I think in a lot of ways, I piggybacked off of his enthusiasm over to these movies.
That's how I feel about like Star Trek with my dad. You know,
Yeah.
Same. Yeah.
So it's like I liked them because he liked them.
Right.
And I thought things were cool because he would tell me they were cool. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this was done this way. And I'm like, oh, that's cool.
That stuff's interesting. Yeah. Cause like just different experiences we had. Cause my mom is huge on Western, specifically John Wayne. And then like we were a Bonanza house, you know, like it was cool, but there's also just like the kid part of me. It's like, well, if my mom likes this, it's probably not cool. Like, I'm not going to like watch this or whatever. But then like, you know, this sounds pretentious and dumb, but then I get shown, you know, a John Ford movie in a film school. And I was like, she was really onto something. Stagecoach is good. You know, she may have known what she was talking about.
Mom was
so then
cool.
Going back to like revisit that stuff, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. But it's a whole different feel than these Sergio Leone Westerns, you know, but this was awesome. I'm curious. I think we say it a lot. Like, I think this stuff hit me at the right time. Like maybe if I had a Steve who was like kind of giving me the behind the scenes as I'm watching it, it may have like
imposing
worked, you know what I mean? Yeah. But it's like, I didn't grow up in that kind of like necessarily like movie loving household. I felt like I was kind of like had to find stuff myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think I would have appreciated this too much, you know, too long ago, basically. So I'm glad we got around to it because this is just like, it's a classic.
Yeah, sure. I feel the same way. And like, I think for me, it would have been, I wouldn't have been able to contextualize it as well as I can now. Yeah. Not only just because like we're older and wiser and now we've seen a lot more stuff. And especially since we've been doing rounds and different episodes throughout this podcast where we purposely visit some older stuff. And I'm personally getting a better sense of like the progression of how films were made, what they looked like, how they sounded, how the people acted, you know, all of the above. Like we're sort of, you know, we're getting a little film history lesson here, and it's easier to appreciate what these movies did in their times.
Yeah.
And before I was only able to compare it to what is available to do now. And these movies sort of movies from this time in my mind were like quaint and like not good or cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But now it's like, I recognize that as not being true. And it's easier to like I said, contextualize everything that.
Well, I can't wait for Tommy to be on a podcast 20 years from now talking about the 1999 Godzilla.
Yeah, exactly. People love Ferris Bueller, but I think this was Matthew Broderick's real shining point here. It was Godzilla. We sleep on it, you know?
I did want to say, I'd love to pitch a new segment of the pod, and this doesn't have to take off at all, but I'm going to do one. I'm going to introduce it right now.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Where essentially we pick a scene from the movie and we create a meme on it.
Okay.
And we give the tagline of the meme along with the scene.
Okay. I dig it.
My scene would be Tuco running through the graves at the end. And then the meme line would be me searching for a movie to watch on Netflix.
It's good.
I like that.
I don't have anything better to contribute. So that's the winner for this week.
Yeah.
That was the example round. So
I'll be thinking of it as we talk. So maybe throughout the episode we can come up with.
Well, so I'll admit, you know, I'm having a hard time with that question and the next segment because I watched this so close together with A Fistful of Dollars. They kind of all have just mashed in my head.
Yeah.
And I remember I was thinking on the way down here, I'm like, I actually don't remember this movie at all. I don't think until, you know, when I really think about it, when I look at some stuff online, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that's what happens. That's what happens. But I was like, honestly, a little nervous to talk about this because I'm like, I don't remember what happened in what movie and what's going on here.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping we can talk about a few things that might help jog my memory. I wanted to talk about like trivia. We haven't done a trivia segment in a while.
Yeah.
And with this movie being so iconic, that's pretty much all you need to say about it, and ubiquitous. I figured there's got to be a lot of interesting stuff, and there certainly is. I picked one. It's literally the first thing I saw, and I thought, I don't know how I can find anything better than that. Yeah. So I'm curious what you guys found. But apparently the skeleton found by Tuco inside the wrong coffin at Sad Hill Cemetery was a real human skeleton. And it was a deceased Spanish actress who had written in her will that she wanted to continue acting even after her death.
That's awesome.
And
she's been eternalized in this movie.
Blew my mind.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, in theory, like she's got to be one of the oldest people like I feel like we have the laws here. Like
that just wouldn't happen.
Yeah, you can't have that anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, maybe she's like the oldest person to ever be in a movie.
You have to like sneak it on.
What
set.
a badass move. And it's like, I mean, this whole series has a lot of that sort of energy to it, because the reason they had to film it in Spain is because Clint Eastwood is working on, what was it, Bonanza? Was it Bonanza? Or Rawhide or something?
Yeah, it's one of those old westerns. Something
Gunsmoke
like
or
that.
something?
Yeah.
And there was a lot of those like the weird contract things, and so like there's a like sort of a punk rock edge to this movie, and this woman they put it like the fact that it's just a real human skeleton, you can kind of tell.
Yeah.
It's like, oh damn, like
they did a great job on this. It looks real.
These old movies, they can do whatever they want, but I thought it was really cool that it wasn't just some poor cadaver or whatever. It was like a woman. It was her dying wish, and she's in one of the most iconic movies of all time. So I don't know the woman's name, so my apologies to her and her estate, but you did it. Congratulations.
Yeah.
That'd be sweet. We really would have made it if that's the case. Matt, what did you find here for your trivia?
So I didn't need to look any further than a phone call with my dad.
Okay.
It's actually doesn't directly have anything to do with the movie. He called, I called him, told him that I was watching this movie, and he said he still remembers when the movie came out because the cheerleaders, I believe it was the cheerleaders. I think he said cheerleaders, whether he meant that or not, I don't know. Apparently they were doing some like street routine, and the song that they were playing on repeat as they were doing their routine was the score.
That's awesome.
Like, okay, this is in Tremont in Utah.
Okay.
I love it.
So I don't know. We talked about like Pleasant Grove's obsession with The Greatest Showman, and reminded me like Tremont in Utah just went all in on the good, the bad, and the ugly.
All right.
I love that. That's amazing.
I mean,
that's so cool.
Tremonton is, from what I remember, is a desolate place. It's not quite as hot and dusty as the locations in these movies, but it fits.
Yeah.
It fits.
I just picture the Bear River High School football team like getting pumped up to the
practicing their squinty stares to intimidate the other team.
Everyone's got their poncho on.
That's awesome.
I had a couple that I'm just going to go through because I really couldn't decide which one. The first one is that this is the highest ranked movie on IMDb to not have any Oscar nominations, which is like nuts. But again, I think it's the time, it's like if they released all these at once and maybe just didn't get submitted for international film, I don't know what it would have been since it's technically an Italian film.
Yeah. And I wonder if there was like some of that, classic xenophobia. Like, it's not American. It couldn't possibly be that good. I mean, at this point, Clint Eastwood, I think his salary was insane, and he took like a 10% cut of the gross for this movie or whatever. But like, even still, I can't, I guess I just don't have any context for like its place in pop culture in the moment. You know what I mean? So maybe it just had something to do with all of that. That's possible. Bananas, because it gets to like an 8.9 on IMDb or something like that.
Yeah, something.
That's crazy.
Again, like score alone, I would think it should have been obviously nominated for. Speaking of a salary, that was another one I thought was interesting is I guess he and Sergio Leone like were having issues and he wouldn't like come out of his dressing room or whatever until he agreed to his payment. I'm pulling these numbers out of my ass, but I'm pretty sure they're correct. Fistful of Dollars, he got $15,000. For a few dollars more, he got $50,000. And then for this, he got $250,000 and a Ferrari, which is crazy to think about. Like him driving a Ferrari onto the set of this movie. It's like, oh yeah, these were like, that is like a pretty recent movie. Like it's not that old, but I just thought that was crazy, like how much he made. But I guess that was like the agreement. Like it wasn't initially just a salary, but then it became like throw in a car. Like,
I want a Ferrari.
Yeah, exactly. I want to drive a Ferrari around here. I mean, I guess if you're shooting in Spain and Italy, that's the place to have one. And the very last one was just that bridge scene. I guess the actual Spanish army was like helping them with that, and they were gonna like blow it up. Like they were some of the extras. And it was supposed to be on the word vai, which like means go. And that's when they were going to do it. I don't know if it was like a second, unit director, something like that was on the same like channel and was telling someone else like vai, like, yeah, we're good. We're go, whatever. So they heard that and they blew it up and no cameras were recording yet.
Oh, it's like Tropic Thunder.
Yeah. So they completely blew up the bridge and nothing happened. Like, I mean, they just didn't like film it. Like the bridge blew up.
Right.
And so Leone like freaked out fired the guy that said, bye, like, and he drove off set right away because he was so scared of like how mad he was. Cause I'm like, yeah, that's huge. Like you blow up that bridge, whatever. So then like someone in the whatever Spanish army came up to Leone and he's like, listen, we'll rebuild it, but you have to bring that guy back. He was like, fine. so the guy got to come back and they did it again.
It's a hell of a
blows
union.
my mind that it's just like,
wow.
That's what it was. No one was recording or anything. So kind of nuts. I liked all of those, but I mean, really the fact that it has no Oscar nominations, it's got to be, something with the international stuff, but to know that they had to rebuild that bridge to blow it up
crazy.
again, like that'd be so heartbreaking. Cause everything was like set up. All the cameras were set up. Everyone was ready to go.
And at that time, everything's so big and clunky and heavy. They're out in the middle of friggin' nowhere. It's so hot. Yeah. That's
kind of crazy.
Brutal. I mean, Ben, you still work shooting real estate. I remember shooting real estate. Like I would lose my mind if like an agent walked into the frame as I'm shooting an ancillary bedroom. You know what I mean? It's like not even like the primary bedroom or a big
and it's all
kitchen.
digital. It's like I can delete this.
Or just like I'll take 2 seconds and get that one shot again. I can't even imagine rebuilding
an entire bridge.
That's insane. Well, there's tons and tons. I like the whole time we've been talking, I've been scrolling through IMDb. So there's tons of good stuff in here. I don't think we need to talk about too much more. But if you like Good, Bad, and the Ugly and you like movie trivia, I highly recommend a little site called the Internet Movie Database. Never heard of it, but it has a lot of good info on there. So
it does.
Give those guys a follow. They need your support. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about the actual movie here. And I wanted to go to one of my favorite segments that we do. It's the brainchild of the man to my left here, the voice. And
if you're not watching on YouTube, you don't know who it is.
And the face.
Who could it be?
It could be anyone. There could be a mirror next to me. Who knows? But we're gonna take a ride in the elevator. We're gonna do elevator pitches.
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
And the idea here is if you had to convince someone to watch this movie, and you had to do that by showing them one scene from the movie or like one specific moment, what would you choose? And Ben, I'd like to hear yours.
Mine is when Tuco is in that gun shop and he's putting together a gun essentially out of like 3 different guns.
That was okay. Again, this is great. That's like I'm watching the movie again for the first time. That scene was awesome. Yeah, I might have picked that if I could remember.
A gun.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm shoehorning in another trivia thing, but I guess I think it was Eli Wallach that played him. Didn't really know anything about guns. Someone just taught him how to like dismantle and assemble one. That was it, but he didn't know much else. And they just kind of let him go in there, like just do your thing. Just so the shop owner too also was just reacting to what he was doing. There's this like a scene at the end of it where he takes like the open and close line, puts his mouth, all just improv. Like he just kind of like, they just like recorded and let him do whatever he wanted. But I just really liked it because Tuco's obviously like our antagonist here. And the way he does is like, he's so calm and collected. And he's just like, oh, let me see that one, and he's like holding conversation while he's like putting together this gun. And, then like, all right, that'll be this much money. He's like, no, it's not, I really enjoyed, I feel like we got to know Tuco as a character in this and just like how confident he is in his own skills, and just like knowing what he's doing. And we just get to meet this new character because we've met the other two, in For a Few Dollars More. Yeah. So it's like, here's a good introduction to like who they're now going against and how much of a bad guy he is and how intimidating he can be without raising his voice, without any really any kind of threat. Like he just kind of tells the guys like, no, like I'm just taking this, like give me some cartridges. I'm out of here. I was like, okay. So
I like that they call them cartridges too.
Yeah.
I remember. I think that's a really good scene and a really good point. Cause it reminds me a lot of the Anton Chigurh gas station scene in No Country. Like there was a definite, the Anton Chigurh scene is way more menacing, but it was like not in the way that he's not puffing out his chest. He's not like being violent or physical or anything, but it's very soft spoken menace. And Tuco's was like a playful menace, like it's interesting that his unfamiliarity with guns and just putting them together like that is portrayed on the screen as this like ultimate confidence, knowing, okay, this is the best part of this gun. This is the best part of this gun. And like a total disregard for like the way that you do business in the world and the way that you go about it. It's just like, nope, I'm going to do whatever I want and I'm going to pay whatever I want for it. Or probably
Yeah.
not pay
I
or
want
whatever.
this handle. I want this barrel. And just,
And
putting
it's
it
a really
together.
cool way to show exactly how you said, like, this is a guy not to be trifled with. And it was a way he didn't even, there was guns involved, but not in the way that you would think.
And I'm sure like a lot of people look like this, and we know as the audience, like what's going to happen for the most part. But when he goes into that store, he looks like a homeless person back then, just like he looks so awful and beat up. And this guy's like, yeah, he's got money. I'll show him all these guns. It's like, no, that man has no money, has no pockets. Like that guy has nothing. And you're just like, yeah, here's all these guns. Like you have to see what's coming here, right? Like this man clearly is just going to take this stuff, but I don't know. It's just kind of funny. Like he looks even homeless from back then. He looks so bad.
Also thought it was cool that his name was Tuco. Shout out Breaking Bad. Two really good and very different villains.
Yeah.
Both equally menacing and scary, but for far different reasons. Tight. Matt, I think your scene involves Tuco as well. So let's go.
It does. I mean, it's hard to find a scene in this movie that doesn't involve Tuco.
That's
honestly.
true.
But mine was the scene where Angel Eyes recognizes Tuco and Blondie. And then he starts to ask, Tuco's going by the name Bill Carson, which is who Angel Eyes has been like tracking the whole movie, looking for. It sparks his interest. And so he's asking Tuco about Bill Carson, and Tuco's kind of playing it cool, not knowing that Angel Eyes knows exactly what Bill Carson had. And then he starts torturing him, but while he's torturing him, he has the army play this like most somber song. It was such a cool scene. Like really such a weird mix. And they even like carried that music for a while throughout the movie that I thought was a really nice touch. But it kind of reminded me of the Tarantino scene in Reservoir Dogs, the Stuck in the Middle with You song sequence, just with how like, these, I guess the tone of the song isn't matching what's happening with the
Exactly. Yeah.
So it was a cool thing to see in a spaghetti Western of all places.
Totally.
Just, like I've appreciated through this whole like trilogy that how much he mixes it up with these movies and the sequences and just like tries new, weird, awesome things.
Yeah. We talked about this in A Few Dollars More, but I really like the idea of just taking the same general character and just changing their relationships and the environment around them and seeing how how that type of character would react in this situation. I think it's a really cool way to do a trilogy. It's I don't really have the word that I'm looking for, but I just like it. I think it's interesting. And I don't think I've ever seen it before or since, but Lord knows I haven't seen everything. We're
working on it.
We're trying real hard. You just said, Matt, that you liked seeing this in a spaghetti Western. And I don't mean to completely, jump over your elevator pitch there, but it leads right into mine. And I think it all kind of ties together, but I like my scene and I like all of these scenes because we talked earlier about how these movies, before we got to know them and we, were able to appreciate context and all that they seemed like quaint or they would seem silly or dumb or not cool enough or not interesting enough or not innovative enough or whatever. And these scenes are a perfect example of how wrong that was. The scene I chose was where Angel Eyes, when he finds the name Bill Carson, he does so by invading some family's home. And he sits down and he eats their soup and he, threatens the man of the house into giving up the name Bill Carson. The man tries to bribe him out of killing him. I mean, the scene starts with the man in the home asking like, how much did they pay you to kill me? And that's where I would start the scene. Like, how much did they pay you to kill me? Angel Eyes says they paid me $500. The man tries to bribe him with $1,000. And he says, well, when I'm paid to do a job, I finish the job. And he shoots him in cold blood right there in his living room after eating his soup. And then he shoots his son as he comes down the stairs. And that's an absolutely horrifying and brutal scene. And it's not something that I don't like that. I wanted to be clear, I'm not a monster, but I just thought that was fucking awesome. And it's not something I expect in my ignorance. It's not something I expect from movies like that. You know what I mean? Like we talked about how the violence here in these movies kind of seems cartoonish because we don't see like the blood splatter.
Yeah.
And it's
a lot of flailing.
just a lot of pew pew, like just kind of like throwing guns everywhere. It's a lot of flailing and I've really appreciated that about these movies because it was a little more palatable, right? Without all the gore. But this movie was like wildly violent and there was a lot of shocking stuff, and this scene being a perfect example of that. And it just further drives home the point that, like, I mean, these movies are revered and loved for a reason.
Yeah.
And I would highly recommend anyone who feels the same way that I used to, come out of your comfort zone, follow us along on Movie Club and see some of this stuff, because there's a lot of innovative, really cool things that happen. Like Matt just alluded to with the interesting way they use the score and incorporate this. I can't remember there's a term for that where the music doesn't match the tone of the scene.
I know that's what I was
remember,
drawing a blank on.
I remember studying this and the teacher that taught me used the opening of Good Morning Vietnam in it where Robin Williams, whatever.
Yeah. Just the contrast of it all. But that's not the word.
But there's a lot of cool stuff. And I mean, people have been doing this for a long time. So get off your high horse, as it were.
I think it's cool. Like this movie, I think I just like read too much trivia, but there's no dialogue for the first like 10 and a half minutes. And I really enjoy, I think this is part of it, but how we like get introduced to all these characters. Yeah. Because this is the first one where we get like the title cards, like this guy's the ugly. Yeah. You know, and it's like, cool. Now we're going to go to Angel Eyes. He's the bad. Yeah. And I think that's like shortly after that, which is cool. Like I like yours ending where it ends, but I also enjoy the movie where he then goes to the guy who hired him, tells him like, oh yeah, I got the name. It's Bill Carson. He's like, oh, awesome. Cool. Here's $500. He's like, and I have to shoot you now because that guy paid me $1,000. You know, it's just like, I did my job, but now this guy hired me that I killed already. So
that's like the scene where he puts the pillow on his head. Right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like this closed loop where he ended up with $1,500, technically did both jobs. And he's just like, all right, moving on. Yeah. You know, that kind of a thing. And I think that's then afterwards, like, it's the bad. It's like, okay, cool. And then we go to Clint Eastwood and get the good. So, and to bookend the movie with those was awesome to see. I did not expect Angel Eyes to die. That threw me off. Like I didn't see that coming at all, but I thought it was perfect.
Well, and those title cards are another good example of what I'm trying to talk about here. Like those were cool. Real, like the style of that, the way that it happened, like, you know, trying something like that can easily go sideways. And like these movies just have a ton of style. Yeah. Like a ton of style. You can see why people pull from them so much, but those title cards are a great example. Like the font, the typeface looks really cool. Like just everything about it was really
done
cool
really
and
well.
Interesting. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I thought it looked awesome.
Well, we've taken an elevator ride. We're back on the ground level and we're going to hop in the old 3 Films mobile and head over to the drive-in.
Right. We're hopping in Clint's Ferrari.
Yeah, we're going to hop in Clint's Ferrari.
But Clint's Ferrari for sure.
Right. For this episode, we're driving Clint's Ferrari.
Just bring it back to Ferris Bueller yet again.
But we're going to head over to Adam Driver's drive-in double feature. And we're going to choose the movie that we think would pair best with this movie.
I just had sex. I'm about to eat nachos. It's the greatest moment of my life.
And we're also going to decide the order in which we're going to play them. And I'm going to start with Benjamin.
Well, I think it's a perfect segue. Matt, I don't know if you were setting it up or not, but my choice was Reservoir Dogs, specifically for movies ending with a Mexican standoff. That was my thought process behind it. I was like, those are both iconic. Like that's what I thought of watching this movie. I'm like, oh man, I want to watch Reservoir Dogs now because like that's also a great, standoff that they have.
We need to do a poll. Like when you hear the term, and maybe we can think of a better term. I don't know if we want to, I don't know. Yeah.
Is it PC? I don't know what it is, but
it feels
what I'm
wrong,
about.
But
it does, right? But
but we should put out a poll. Like which one, when you hear that term, which do you think of? Do you think of Reservoir Dogs or do you think of this movie here?
Or do you think of the Office where they have their finger guns at each other?
Wild card, yeah.
Or do you just get angry?
It's like I can't answer
or do you just want to cancel us now?
But your point of like, stuck in the middle with you where it's just like the music isn't matching the tone. I think that I hadn't even thought about that, but that plays into it so well as well. And I don't know, it's just kind of an interesting combo in my eyes that I would like to watch. I think, I don't know what I want to do. I think maybe I want to do Reservoir Dogs first because I think that'll, most people are familiar with that and would be interested in it. and be fresh in their minds to then go into Good, Bad, and the Ugly, so that when we have like the music and the standoff and stuff, they can kind of see like, oh, maybe this is like partly where, Tarantino was inspired by, was this kind of stuff. So that's what I would go with: Reservoir Dogs and then Good, Bad, and the Ugly.
I approve. I will attend this double feature.
Of
Of course, I guess I'm in the Ferrari with you, so I don't have a choice.
No choice. Watch all 6 movies at once in the same car.
Yeah. Matthew, where would you go here?
So I would show this first.
Okay.
And then I would show the new True Grit by the Coen brothers.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a lot of the older like John Wayne Westerns.
I think I've only seen the old True Grit because I saw the new one and I wanted some context.
But one thing, I might be,
The new one's better.
I might be speaking out of turn with like the scores of like the older Westerns, pre Clint Eastwood, pre spaghetti Westerns, but like the score was way more like adventure type. And I feel like these like protagonists were portrayed in a certain way. And obviously like Clint Eastwood's just like he just is like so cool in these settings. But I felt like the way that they were depicted in the new True Grit with the relationship between the characters was a lot more akin to like what we're seeing in like the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Yeah.
Than in like older Westerns. And so I kind of like this relationship that they have, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in this, Tuco, Angel Eyes, and Blondie. And I like the characters that we see in True Grit, just as far as like a Western character study goes.
And that cast is awesome.
Yeah. The cast
so
is
good.
great.
Yeah, I love that movie.
The scene that always sticks out to me is the feverish horse ride with this.
So
she has
good.
a snake bite or something. I can't.
Yeah.
I just like it's just one of those. It just pops off the screen. It's just a really cool looking scene. I think it's a great pick. I'm gonna go a similar direction. I'm gonna pick another Western. When you started talking about True Grit and our boy, the dude, he's also in a Western that I really like. It's more modern, Hell or High Water.
Yeah.
We watched that very early before the movie club, before the podcast. I think before we even had you in on it. And it's really good. It's a really, really cool Western. And it's got
the Prince of Three Films Pod, Chris Pine.
That's right. Chris Pine's in it.
My guy Ben Foster's in it.
Yeah.
Like I think they play brothers. Like that's one. Yeah, I think we watched and just like didn't know what to expect going into it. I was like, oh, that was awesome.
Yeah.
That was so good. I really
I haven't
seen it.
Different pick in mind, but I think I'm going to stick with Hell or High Water. I really like that movie. And I like the idea of having like the influence and the cause and the effect, right? I think that's really cool. And the dude's in both of them. So it's a
win.
It's a good double feature for your boy. All right. Well, so we've seen our double feature. We've said hello to Adam Driver. It's time to hop in the Ferrari and head over to our Rushmore mountain.
These are OR scrubs.
Oh, are they?
And this week we're going to be discussing. We're going to discuss our best film scores. We're going to fill out a Rushmore for best film scores in honor of our boy Ennio Morricone. I think we might have done this before, but it was before we did the segment where we're only going to come up with one Rushmore. We used to each pick 4 movies, but now we're just going to have 4 movies. And
I like it.
And I think this movie, Good, Bad, and the Ugly, would be on
for sure.
Rushmore.
Oh yeah.
So this Rushmore is going to include The Good, Bad, and the Ugly, and whatever Matt is about to pick.
I'm incapable of picking a score that isn't John Williams. I'm
Yeah.
just going to say it right here.
Does
I
one
can't
exist?
do it.
I
I
don't know.
want
Yeah.
to. I mean, I want to, but I can't.
Yeah.
And I would pick Star Wars. I would. I'm not going
Okay.
to. Because honestly, the most magical score that I've heard in my lifetime is the Harry Potter theme.
Yeah.
Mm.
Got to go Harry Potter. Let's go Harry.
It's so good.
I wish I had the connection with Harry Potter that you all do. It just missed me somehow. I don't know what it is.
It hasn't missed yet. It just hasn't hit yet.
That's true. I guess that's true. Yeah.
It's going to hit.
Did we talk about season 3? You watch all the Harry Potters and Fast and Furious. Like that's one idea we came up with, right?
Yeah. That'd be a hell of a season.
I would love it so much.
I want to do that so bad, but there's just so many things that I want to watch. And we've got some really, really cool stuff lined up already for season 3. That's not any of those things. Not that there's anything wrong with any of those things.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited about season 3, but we do have like half the season left we could fill up with.
Yeah.
Harry is like half the season.
Yeah, exactly. I would love that.
2 Harry rounds.
Maybe stay tuned for some hints as to what's coming in season 3. I think that's a great pick. The Harry Potter score is awesome. I think I've talked about it before with like the Shire stuff, but we've had, if it's like a rainy day or whatever you're doing puzzles, like they have just those scores on YouTube and they're just like great background music. Like that's what I talked about when we did Lord of the Rings. I'm like, oh, I know this song because like I've listened to it before. But this is the same with the Harry Potter stuff where it's just like, oh, it's just so whimsical, magical. It's amazing. Mine is like not magical necessarily, but it's like one of my favorites to go back to. And it's, speaking of the dude, Tron Legacy.
Yeah.
Score, it really is very dude heavy. The score is done by Daft Punk and it is awesome. It's just like a bonus Daft Punk album that, we didn't get. And I love it. Like there's something like 30 songs on it, like they're just like, they're moving through. They're all like kind of 2 minutes ish, like nothing super long, but it's also cool. Just like how well it works with the movie. I mean, the movie isn't great, but this is definitely the saving grace of it. And I just want to do something like a little different than like a traditional, like the orchestral score and things like that. Mm-hmm. So, I'd go with Tron Legacy. I think it's a really fun score. Even if you haven't seen or don't want to see the movie, it's still awesome to listen to.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I dig it. I've neither seen it nor heard that soundtrack. So that's exciting.
Season 3, baby.
Here we go. All Daft Punk movies.
So I'm not going to lie. I feel a lot of pressure being the last one to pick here because there's so many iconic scores out there, and Harry Potter's great. I assume Tron Legacy's good. Good, Bad, and the Ugly's great. I trust your opinions on all those things, but I feel like there's so many things that need to get piled into this fourth pick. But I got to go with my gut. I really wanted to pick Purple Rain. I really wanted to. For kind of like you said, it's just a Prince album, which I'm always in favor of. But if I'm being true to myself, if I try to like conjure a movie score in my head, it's always turns out to be Jurassic Park.
John Williams.
It's John Williams will be represented on this Rushmore.
Yeah.
I don't have the same connection with Star Wars or Harry Potter that you guys do. The Lord of the Rings score is not something that I've ever appreciated or thought about until recently, doing this last round of trilogies. And I never really thought about scores in general. But that's why Jurassic Park stands out so much to me, is because score wasn't something that was on in my conscious when I was enjoying movies, and that one stands out.
Would you say you haven't been keeping score?
I have not been keeping score. I would say that exactly.
That's exactly.
Shout out to my cousin Sarah on Tyler's pick, because she walked down the aisle to the Jurassic Park theme.
That's incredible.
That's awesome.
It was awesome.
Our guest that was going to be here tonight walked down the aisle to the Star Wars theme, actually, which is really cool.
John Williams.
That's the last time our band played was there. Yeah, I think so.
By the way, my mom works with a guy that knows us and used to go to our shows. randomly.
That's awesome.
So shout out
If
that
it's
guy.
you, come onto our pod. Like and subscribe.
I can't remember. My mom was walking by his desk and he had like a Misfits figurine. She's like, "Oh, my son used to do a thing." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I know those guys."
Oh, that's awesome.
I don't know who he is, but
I mean, if he came on, we'd have to watch the Misfits, right?
Yeah.
We have to watch the Marilyn Monroe movie. It's what
So it
they're
works.
named after. So yeah, find us. Let's watch the Misfits.
Let's watch the Misfits. And until we do, unless there's anything else you guys wanted to talk about, I think this is a perfect place to wrap it up.
It really is, yeah.
I don't know, man. I'm just thrilled to watch these movies. I'm so glad you nominated them. It feels like
It's good. It's fun.
feels like a hole in the filmography has been filled. I was talking to my family about. I told them I was watching these movies, and all of the older people at the table, like their eyes just lit up, and I could really tell that they all had like a strong connection with these movies, and so
Yeah.
it's cool to be a part of that club now. And speaking of clubs, join our movie club by following us on all the socials at 3filmspod. Again, check out our website, 3filmspod.com. We've got tons of cool merch like this brand new shirt that I just got today, designed by none other than Matthew Weiler. We have Patreon support options so you can help us out. And yeah, we're just appreciative of your time, and we hope to see you again soon. Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
When you started out with nothing and you're proud of yourself and your friends they all come crawling, slap you on the back and say,
Was that as good for you as it was for me? Hey, what's going on? You hear that?